Good afternoon. Great to see you still with us, or you just joined us. Thank you for your patience. We are about to witness an amazing panel shine on the topic, Hotels as Catalysts for Regeneration, Redefining Hospitality for a Thriving Future. You're still with us? As regenerative tourism and travel is truly in the DNA of Amanda Ho. And who better to lead this session? Amanda, I'm super happy you're here and that you've brought together such an amazing and inspiring panel with you. So it's an important topic. Please take the floor and introduce yourself and introduce us to your great panelists. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Carolyn. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for sticking with us. I know it's been a long week. I'm honored to be here with you today and to set the stage for this very important discussion. The world is at a crossroads. We see the consequences of extractive business models all around us: biodiversity loss, cultural erosion, and communities left out of decision-making. But what gives me hope every day is the mission of Regeneration. For the past 6 years, Regenerative Travel has championed independent hotels and travel companies that believe that there's only one way to do business, one that restores, renews, and enriches the places in which they operate. At its core, Regeneration is about moving beyond sustainability. Being eco means doing no harm. Sustainability strives for net neutrality, but Regeneration goes a step further. It's actively making something better. And hospitality, Regeneration is rooted in a community partnership, a deep sense of place, and a leadership mindset that is committed to continual improvement. It's not about achieving perfection, but always striving to do better. The travel industry now has an immense opportunity to harness its power as a regenerative force. For years, we've talked about sustainable hospitality, reducing waste, minimizing carbon footprints, and doing less harm. But today we want to ask, what does it truly mean for a hotel to be regenerative? How do we move from sustaining to actively restoring and enriching the places in which we operate? Regeneration is about giving back more than we take. It means integrating nature, community, and culture, not as an afterthought, but as a foundation of a hotel's business model. With that, I'm honored to dive into our discussion and introduce our esteemed panelists to join me on the stage today. So please come up. So this is the third seat. Yeah. Hello, Dr. Carlos. Love to ask you to take the floor and introduce yourself.
Thank you. I am a professor of management and sustainability at EHL Hospitality Business School in Switzerland, working on the field of regenerative tourism, hospitality, and circularity for the last 10 years.
Thank you. Birka, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Amanda, for the invitation to be part of the panel. Let Carlos put his microphone down first. So I'm Birka Valentin. I am the strategic partnership lead of Travalyst. We are a global nonprofit organization that was actually quite young, founded in 2019, so we just have the first 5 years behind us. We're founded by Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, and who, through his leadership, has brought together some of the largest global travel brands, travel and tech brands in that coalition to work together in a pre-competitive environment, which we'll come back later in terms of how that works, to really work on the fundamental system challenges that we have in travel and tourism in terms of sustainability. And so what that looks like, just really quickly to get a feeling for that, the first 5 years we're really focused on aligning on a methodology and for emissions, and that is, and many have seen that from you when booking and searching for a trip and flight, to get flight emission information up onto the platforms to help travelers make better decisions and choices, and that is seen by billions of people worldwide today.
Very important work. Thank you, Birka. Holly?
Hi everyone, it's great to be here today and thank you Amanda for bringing us together. My name's Holly Tuppen, I work for The Long Run. We're a membership organisation of about 80 travel businesses around the world that really they use tourism to fund the restoration of nature. We do that through a framework. I think we have a slide in a minute.
Let's see if I can.
But no worries if you don't. We do that through a framework known as the 4 Cs, which is a holistic balance of conservation, community, culture, and commerce. Yep.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Namgyal Sherpa from Nepal, and I'm the CEO of Sherpa Hospitality Group. So we are based out of Nepal, and all our properties are based in the remote parts of Nepal. Our journey to hospitality started 35 years ago as an adventure travel company. And then we saw a very important need of developing quality accommodation and experience in the remote parts. Today we have 15 lodges operating in mainly 3 trekking regions of Nepal under the brand of Mountain Lodges of Nepal. And recently we've also tied up with Chintamani Hotels to launch the first, I would say, a high-end property in a very remote part of Mustang. And our aim is basically, you know, we talk about sustainability, we talk about regeneration, but I think if we are not focusing on quality, bringing high value and low volume operation, I don't think there's an opportunity there. So our intention is to basically bring quality tourism in the remote parts of Nepal and bring a positive impact in the community by, you know, getting more, I would say, quality jobs available, making less impact on the environment, and also having the opportunity to create meaningful experiences for our guests to connect. So yeah, that's a little introduction from us. Thank you.
Thank you, Namgyal. I was just traveling with Namgyal's company for the last few weeks in Nepal, so really was able to see firsthand the incredible work you're doing on the ground. Holly, I'm going to start with you again. For you in the long run, you know, you also represent, you know, about, I think, 80 member properties and companies. What does it mean for you in terms of looking at going beyond sustainability to regeneration?
Yeah, well, I think it's a great question, and I think it's important to acknowledge that there has been some confusion around kind of shifting between the terms sustainability and regeneration. Regeneration has become, to some people, a bit of a buzzword, and it's been used for marketing, and I think that's, yeah, created a lot of confusion in the industry. So it's really important now that we all kind of work together to really remind other people and refine what it means. I think when you look at the kind of theory behind regeneration, it's really moving from a very fragmented mindset and system towards whole systems thinking. And within tourism, that means taking a place-based approach to everything that we do. So that really involves coming from a starting point of acknowledging and understanding the uniqueness of a place. And also then on the back of that, kind of designing businesses, buildings, destinations, where there's really a system of mutual benefit between nature and people within that destination. And I think it often involves other things like, you know, not operating as an island, but kind of looking beyond your business, maybe the starting point being the place you are rather than the needs of your business. And I think by kind of really taking that quite big step back and using that as our starting point, that's when we really start to develop something that starts to look like regeneration, rather than just kind of plonking it on top of what we're already doing.
I love your point about whole systems thinking, because that really is the core of what regeneration means, that everything is interconnected. The land, people, wildlife. So Dr. Carlos, I want to ask you, what are the key business model shifts required for hotels to embed regeneration at their core? And also, how can they balance financial viability with impact-driven initiatives?
Right. But this is a very important and difficult question to answer, to be honest to you. I would say we can take this kind of like a very aggressively, if you wish, and say that a business that want to move, say, one step away from sustainability into becoming more circular and going into regenerative has to take a top-down approach. And by that I mean we have to be very clear about moving the question from what we do into who we are and why we do what we do as a business. So it's a fundamental question about what type of a philosophy and vision we have, how we want to embed ourselves as a business in nature, merging the whole idea that nature and humans, communities belong together, and contributing to an equilibrium. Once we're there, we can start maybe going into more operational aspects, thinking, okay, well, now this is the chance to do better business and start thinking about business. But in a very, summarizing, I would say, instead of start by thinking about the business case of doing regeneration, we should start thinking about what kind of business we want to offer, contribute to the planet and to communities. This is a fundamental question. Afterwards, we go for the business case.
I think that's an important point as well, because looking at regenerative principles, it really is asking communities what they need, and also not assuming what the hospitality or hotel project should design in terms of experiences. And check onto that, Birka. Travalyst is really working to, I think, help standardize and also create more of a framework for reporting and also ESG metrics. And you speak a little to that and how that really will lead the way in terms of creating a more regenerative future.
Yeah, so I'll build a little bit on what was said already before, because we have spent many years trying to measure sustainability and the progress and really track to see and understand where we are. And it's been a difficult journey so far. And it continues to be. And so when we talk about regenerative tourism, we are taking a step even further, right? What the common narrative and kind of the thinking and measurement has been in the last few years was really about looking at and understanding what harm we are creating, and trying to reduce that harm. While with regeneration, really, when we look at that, we want to understand and see what is the net positive impact that tourism is creating. So understanding all of the costs and risk and harm, but then also looking at the positive effects and weighing that against each other, with obviously the hope and the intent to get to a system shift where the positive overweights, right? And so when we as a coalition think about measurement and data and all of that, because our mission is to bring sustainability data with the spirit of regeneration, of course, to the mainstream, it is quite a discussion. There are a lot of different elements that come into all of that, be it the quality of data, the type of indicators and criteria, which are big discussions, the frameworks, the goals, and all of that, right? What we see, and from the experience from the last few years, that from the work that we've been doing, is that there's a very common challenge of trying to standardize and align on frameworks and concepts that gives everyone kind of the direction where we need to go, while at the same time, and Holly was mentioning the place-based importance there, right, of the spirit of regeneration, that data does need to be then applicable and adaptable to the local context. And that is pretty much the line where we move, right, from one to the other. And so we as a coalition, of course, when we look at frameworks and concepts and methodologies, we're trying to follow that spirit, to show the same data everywhere and follow the same concept and support other organizations who are working on criteria and frameworks like WSHA, WTTC, UN Tourism, and those outside even of tourism, to come up with those frameworks, but keeping in mind that we need that it doesn't then stick to silos and is applicable. And so that's a that's one of those barriers, but it's a really important one to keep in mind when we talk about what is actually, how can we successfully measure, because that is what enables all of that.
Are you seeing that translate to consumer decision making on your side?
Yeah, so there is still very little research out there in the end, unfortunately, what that means. On the aviation side, of course, because we have been working on that emission figure, we've been looking at that, right? And it is not the most exciting percentages that are coming out of it, that it actually changed consumer behavior, but it is also something where a starting point to know that at least people see the information. That itself is something that we haven't had before. And so while we are moving also on the accommodation side with data and bringing that to the mainstream, it is something that all the industry as well as our coalition need to continuously measure to know and see the changes, hopefully, that's coming with it.
Thank you. Now, Holly, you have anything to share? I know in the long run has your own certification, and if that's kind of also, you're seeing that in terms of consumer resonance on the certification and data side.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard one, isn't it? I think most people who work in kind of comms in the travel industry know that we've got a bit of an intention gap going on between what consumers say they want and then what they actually do at the point of booking. So lots of people are talking about sustainability, regeneration, but that very rarely actually translates into, you know, what they book. And I think more and more, you know, with kind of the EU directive coming in about greenwashing, and it will be interesting whether that will reach regenerative concepts as well. And then this kind of intention gap, I think more and more it's sustainability isn't what we're selling. What we're selling is that sustainability improves your experience. So really we all just need to be telling those stories of how the experience is ultimately improved when we come at tourism from a place of regeneration, which is essentially a kind of deep love and understanding for a place. And we don't necessarily need to use labels, I think, to get consumers buying these products.
Namgyal, shifting gears a bit, I know we chatted a bit, you know, Mustang, I got to see firsthand all the work that you're doing in the community. How, not only just in Mustang, but also in the Everest region, how did you incorporate local communities into the decision-making process of building the lodges?
I think, you know, when we are developing properties, I think it's very important to be connected to the place that we operate in. I think there needs to be a mindset shift also in the leadership. That we are in a place of influence and we can make a difference. At Shintamani Mustang, some of the ways how we incorporated that was, of course, like I shared earlier, was bringing back you know, high-value jobs back in the community where that didn't exist before. And even our messaging during the hiring stage was, you know, you're more than welcome and you don't need an experience to work here. I think what we saw was when we bring and grow the team that are from that area, there's a sense of ownership, there's a sense of respect. And it was, I think, how do we create a better partnership and collaboration? And how do we also respect where we are? I think that those are some of the things that you know, was helping us when we are doing this project.
And also for context, I mean, the new generation in the region also wants to leave. They don't want to stay, they want to go to the big city. So you're also kind of creating a sense of pride for the local people to also work in tourism and stay.
Yeah, definitely it provides some sense of hope. And some of the things that we've done is we, you know, being part of Shintamani Hotel Group, we've also created some exchange programs. So there are people who had actually not left, you know, the region now are being able to go to different parts of Nepal, learn from different cross trainings, and even Shintamani in Cambodia. So that definitely gives them, like I said, sense of confidence and hope. And it also drives, I think, positive message in the community, and for them to think in more along this line, as opposed to other unhealthy practices that's been going on for, you know, like if you go to Nepal, you know, still a lot of the hotel lodges it's almost free of cost if you're spending or eating meals there. And like I shared before, you cannot really give back to the community if you're working from that angle, you know. So that's why I think the idea for us was, how do we bring back quality operations, quality experiences back in these places where it's never been done before.
Holly, any other examples you can share around cultural preservation and heritage from the long run?
Yeah, sure. I think we were talking a bit before, weren't we, about that, you know, it's quite easy in the tourism industry to create cultural experiences that might end up being a bit exploitative, maybe kind of commoditize culture in a way that isn't in harmony with how the local people see that culture and what they want to happen to it. So I think with the long run, we always try and help our members to really design cultural experiences coming from a place first of doing all the research to really understand the uniqueness of that culture. So going back to those regenerative principles of understand what's there, and then really create a space where you have a constant and continual dialogue with the local community, so that whenever they feel uncomfortable about a cultural experience or they don't want to participate in that anymore, there is a constant dialogue and they feel comfortable to say so. So I think creating that kind of stakeholder space and awareness is a really important part of designing cultural experiences. And we've got some really lovely examples. One that was launched just last October is the Guanabara Trail, Bay Trail in Brazil, which was launched by one of our members, Sinal Deval. And they're actually trying to create kind of a bioeconomic region in the area, and what they've done is they've created this walking trail. Rather than kind of send their guests out for various pockets of cultural experiences, they've invested in a walking trail so that the local community can create their own experiences that they then directly make money from. And that's just helping to spread the value of tourism in that local area, and it's creating a much more authentic experience for the tourists as well.
I think it's so important to also ensure that the experiences we're developing are not performative. It's not commoditized, but really, you know, something as simple as a village walk or tour can also just be as meaningful. I think there's such a desire for travel to be so wow and just like shock and awe, but it really doesn't have to be that in terms of what a genuine, authentic experience can be.
Yeah, totally. And another one of our members that I know is one of yours as well, Tiger Mountain Pokhara Lodge. They, a long time ago, about 10 years ago, realized that tourists were asking to see local villages, and so guides ended up just taking them into the local villages, and then they were saying, do you want a cup of tea? It's 50p or whatever, and there was this weird kind of very ad hoc exchange of money going on for cultural experiences, and so what they did is they just sat down with some of the local people and their employees, and they came up with a system whereby the locals could, if they wanted, invite tourists into the village, but then they actually had a totally separate forum where the local people could say, actually, we now want to raise money for our local school, and then the hotel helps facilitate that fundraising. And obviously they made a lot more money, and the money goes to a project that the village really needs, rather than creating a very strange and unhealthy and unethical ad hoc exchange of money for cultural experiences.
Thank you. Dr. Carlos, looking at food sourcing to waste management, how can hotels transform their supply chains to be more regenerative? And are there any particular suppliers or partnerships that you've recognized that are leading the way?
Right. So before we were talking about, say, business model and how companies and hotels and almost any business in the tourism industry can embrace regeneration. And as I said, my understanding is that there's always a little bit of this dilemma between whether we go top-down or maybe bottom-up. And that's something that it creates some tension. And in academia, what we're seeing in research is that there are, say, companies that are more pragmatic in the sense of they want to see results of what they do. And there are businesses that maybe with a little bit more like a mid-long-term view, they approach this change as something more proactive and less less worried about data and immediate results. Now, to your question, you talk about food, and this is something that, as some of the other resources that we need for in hospitality to do our business, we can just go more bottom-up, more operational, thinking about food as okay, what are our partners, what are our suppliers? And in here, I can be a little bit provocative. We are all very much into this idea that local sourcing is the way to go. And sometimes what I see is that maybe we don't want to take for granted that just because you are sourcing locally, you are doing it in a more sustainable or regenerative way. A little bit of this localism is ingrained on, if you wish, a little bit of ideology. And this ideology is not necessarily something positive for the industry, for companies. So say, for example, how about we build a network of suppliers and providers that they all shared this idea of becoming and being more regenerative, regardless is a little bit of whether they are local or regional or national or international. Maybe we are contributing to a better economy, maybe. If we do so, then we are going to be in contradiction with the way we operate as, say, sustainability, numbers, data, footprint, and scopes oriented, which is true that it can be, in the short term, something not necessarily positive for our business and our image, but then it's better for who we are as an organization. So for food is something that it has this idea, is a food a commodity, is food more like a part of who we are as a company, as a social group, as a culture. We have to take a stand, and we have to be very clear about who we are as a company, what we want to do, and what message we want to provide to our guests, to everyone in the community, and then we move from there. So, as you wish, as a quick final takeaway, I would say, don't use shortcuts. Don't just say, I'm going to go for local, because that's what it seems to be clever to do in social media. Have a clear vision for your business, or where you stand and where you're aiming at.
Thank you.
Can I just add to that? Sorry,
Yes.
Amanda. Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. I guess when we're looking at regeneration, it's also not necessarily just having a clear vision for your business, but it's having a clear vision of how you can benefit that place. But it's the same principle applies. It's kind of starting with, food might be a priority in your mind, but if that's not really the priority in the local community, then maybe you need to shift to something else. So it's kind of balancing those two things of understanding what does the place need, and as a business, what are you best placed to deliver on?
Namgyal, I'm curious also, you operate in very remote regions. Any challenges in particular in terms of looking at supply chain and sourcing?
Oh, yes. So you've just recently visited Everest. So most of our lodges actually operate in areas that, where we don't even have roads. So the challenges is definitely more from the infrastructure level. So we have to operate in areas sometimes where there's also not electricities. And definitely, I think access and the weather is one of the major one. Another challenge is, I think, is also we don't have a very good policies in place for promoting, again, projects in these remote areas where it's very, I would say, fragile, right? There are communities and areas where it's such a rich in terms of history, but these are in danger because there are not too many people going there, or there's a lot of challenges. And I think, like you mentioned, I think hotel can be that catalyst is when we go into these communities and we work together. And I think there's definitely this sense, like I said, sense of hope, and people are staying, especially the locals, right? And we also talk about sustainability, but like everyone shared, if the locals are not aligned with that, then it's not I would say, meaningful, right? And I think the best guardian of that place are the locals people, and it's about how do we try and retain them, how do we make them believe that there is a potential. So yes, these are.
Thank you. And Holly, similarly, a lot of the long-run members are operating very fragile ecosystems. Are there any particular innovative approaches you've seen in hotels contributing to biodiversity and also rewilding, carbon sequestration?
Yeah, I think so. For the long run members, they're in a privileged position because most of them actually came from the starting point of wanting to protect nature on their doorstep, and they're actually using tourism as the vehicle to do that. So it's kind of flipped on its head a little bit, maybe for some more conventional tourism businesses or hospitality businesses. But I think for any kind of business, one of the best approaches we've seen is when they really look beyond their borders. So rather than just kind of, it's really going back to those regenerative principles of rather than seeing yourself as an island or working in silo, it's kind of looking beyond and how can you work with your neighbours to create much bigger impact. So as the long run, we've got about 80 members, and collectively they have direct impact over about 1.2 million acres of ecosystems around the world. But through all these different programs where they reach out to local people, they set up bigger privately protected areas or bigger nature reserves on their doorstep. That number leaps up to 23 million acres. So if, as a travel industry, we were all doing the same, then you can see kind of this multiply effect going on. And I think for long-run members, they have quite large conservation projects. A lot of them have quite a lot of land, so it's slightly different again. But I think even as an urban hotel, there are some great examples of, rather than just putting hives on the roof and putting a few planters on your window boxes, which is lovely. It's actually kind of identifying, okay, where's our nearest regenerative farming project? How can we work with them so that they're supplying us and we're helping to fund that farm to farm in a more wildlife-friendly way? So I think for everyone, it's kind of looking beyond to see who you can partner with.
Thank you. So we've been discussing now a lot of the grassroots approach in terms of independent hotels, Namgyal and Holly, the long run. Birka, shifting gears a bit to looking at kind of the top-down approach of policy and collaboration. How can the hospitality sector work with policymakers, certification bodies, and financial institutions to create incentives for regeneration and set a new standard?
That's a really big question, but I'll try to pull out a couple of things there. In order for this systematic shift to happen and move the travel and tourism sector towards a net positive, along the net positive pathway, right? That's sometimes the terminology that's been used. We have that common goal, and that is clear, and there are a lot of things that can be done, right? And we've already touched on some of those right here in the round, be it policy and advocacy engagement, education, the data, the technical side of things. So there sometimes, and as far as we know from many of our partners and the hotels and hotel companies as well we're in touch with, it is very overwhelming, right? And seeing where actually is the biggest impact that can happen. The underlying denominator in all of this is collaboration. Right, and collaboration, I mean, not in a sense of, and I think we're coming a bit out of years of kind of the notion of transactional collaboration and saying, and having kind of time-bound projects between a couple of organizations, often announcing collaborations without having a really clear idea of the roadmap, of the roles of the organizations involved, no mechanism for accountability in it. So I'm not talking about that kind of collaboration, I'm really talking about also a shift in our mindset in terms of collaboration and moving towards transformational impact networks between organizations in those different areas where work needs to be done in order to create, enabling factors to then shift the whole system. And it sounds all really up on the cloud, but in practice, in our case, for example, coming just back to the data part, we are, I just mentioned it earlier a little bit, that we are looking for the next 5 years of our existence into helping to get data, sustainability data, to the mainstream in the accommodation space. And what we've been starting to do is, because we'll need systems, and we are not very good at this in tourism, data systems that interact and interlink with each other, right? And are much better in the connection so that we can have that standardization and that local application that I talked about earlier. And so we are in the process of, while we are developing this on the technical side, having strategic partners in the mix of that, technical partners, private companies, of course, all of our coalition partners, as well as other commercial entities that have already data, so that we can work together on that kind of data system. And that is not easy, we know, because we are a coalition of big players. But it is really the only thing how we can create that shift, because one company or a few won't bring the change that we actually need.
From a practical standpoint, Travalyst has been behind putting the green or eco labels on OTAs, for example, correct? Like the work that you've been doing has been translating to that.
Yeah, so that's a longer discussion. looking at time here, it is true. I mean, our mission is to get information to the customers, right, and to the travelers. So, sustainability information to be shared globally is a complicated thing, especially right now on the regulatory side. Not everything can be shared and shown, especially if there's a methodology behind that then scores if something is more sustainable or the other. So it's a bit of a longer discussion, but yes, we are working still with the coalition and continue to work while regulation is developing, and we are also getting guidance from that and more clarity on that, what can be displayed and what cannot be displayed, to see how the future of that could look like, and how does the communication then actually towards travelers, be it business and leisure, and the business, the supply chain, right, look like, which is a tricky thing to do at this moment. Certifications are there as well, but that there's also regulation coming in, and there's going to be a lot of evolution that needs to happen in order to increase quality. So, yeah, a longer one.
Thank you. My last question for all my panelists today is, we're looking ahead 10 years, what would a truly regenerative hospitality sector look like, and what change do we need to make today to make that a reality? Dr. Carlos?
I go super fast. I would say businesses need not to take this challenge lightly. It is important to share the passion and the view that we need more sustainability, more circularity, more a regenerative tourism, but in a professional way. And I know that businesses need help. So when they don't have the skills, they need to reach out to people like what we have in the panel, that they are experts. And we don't improvise, we do it systematically. It's a real challenge, and it's something that business needs to take very seriously. So in 10 years from now, we should have professionals or clear collaborations with experts.
Thank you. Birka?
Yeah, so 2030 is right around the corner, right? So that's a bit scary. And there are many moments where me as well, and I've been in this area for a few years now, notice that I get to a point of frustration and a bit of helplessness, right? And when we see the news of SDGs are not on track, climate goals are not on track, we've just passed 1.5 mark in all of those, knowing in terms of regeneration, right, that humans don't completely act like nature does. We are not as smart. There are biases, emotions, all of that playing in. So in terms of decision making, it is not as easy to really shift a system, knowing the characteristics and habits that we have as humans. But instead of really thinking about what if we can actually create that shift, it's about how are we able to create those enabling conditions to do so. And so for us as a coalition, it is all about that collaboration, trying to move and see which are the areas where we can really create that impact with data on our side, of course, especially.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to keep it super brief and just, I think the most unpopular of the tourism elephant in the rooms is growth. I don't think we can talk about a regenerative tourism industry unless we address reducing growth.
I think, in my opinion, when we start rethinking. Right now the term sustainability becomes like a standard, right? And it's a thing to do as you are running a business. I think when there's this mind shift between the being pressured to do as opposed to really believe in why it's important, and I think that's when we start to see a big change. I would say in the communities and places that we work in. So it's basically working more on the values and the culture. I think that's when we'll see some changes, I think.
I want to thank all my panelists. We've run out of time, but very inspiring conversation, and hope you all are also inspired to keep doing the important work that we have to do in order to really regenerate our planet. So thank you so much. Thank you.